soon. So why is that person playing the musical instrument on the weekends for no money? Why? Because it's interesting, because it's fun, because it's inherently rewarding, because you get better at it. That is fundamental to being a human being, and once again, routinely neglected inside of many organizations. And even worse, there's a growing body of evidence that shows it might be the single most powerful motivator at work. Let me give you one example from a terrific researcher at the Harvard Business School named Teresa Amabile. She did this long study of motivation inside of companies in North America, and where she had people, over several thousand people over several years, each day write down their level of motivation. Okay, we get a good picture of our mental state if we chart it every single day. If we say, how was your week? People remember the highs, remember the lows, but don't remember the day-to-day. So several thousand workers at several companies over several years. This glorious picture of what really motivates people at work. When are people feeling most motivated? She crunches the numbers. It's not even close. It's not even close. The single largest motivator at work, she found, was making progress. Making progress. The days that people were making progress in their work. Again, it's a day. You don't make a huge amount of progress in a day. The days that people were making progress, getting a little bit better, contributing a little bit more, those were the days they felt most motivated. Those were the days they felt most engaged. Those were the days they felt most loyal to the organization. Now this, to my mind, recast the role of a manager, not as someone trying to get compliance, but someone trying to help people see their progress, put people in positions where they can make progress. Making progress is inherently motivating. It's also, again, for those of you in the nonprofit sector, the dirty little secret about making progress as a motivator, it's free. It's inherently motivating. Now, how do we do this? How do we do this? There's a concept from the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, originally from Hungary, now in the United States, called flow. What he talks about flow. Flow are those delicious moments in our life when the challenge is so matched to our capabilities that we lose a sense of time, we lose a sense of self. You could see it in the faces of the musicians who perform here. They're not conscious of time, they're not conscious of themselves, they're in the moment. Those are among the most exalted experiences of human existence. And what's curious about the research on flow is that we're more likely to have those moments at work than in leisure. In part because leisure is so passive. We want challenge. And so the more we create organizations that are flow-friendly, that give people that sense of flow, the better people will perform. One other way to do this. In order to achieve mastery, whether it's sports or music or art or anything, you have to have feedback. You have to get information on how you're doing. And unfortunately, the workplace is one of the most feedback-deprived environments in our existence. Think about it. What's the mechanism in our organizations typically for getting feedback? Performance review, exactly. An annual performance review, right? Think about that. This is a pretty flawed institution when you think about it, all right? Let's analogize to tennis here for a second. All right, imagine if Rafael Nadal or Serena Williams got feedback on their tennis once a year. See, they wouldn't be very good tennis players, right? Because you need the rich, robust feedback. The other thing about performance reviews is that they're not authentic conversations. They are, in my view, since they were birthed here in North America, they're basically, in my opinion, they're America's form of kabuki theater, where people are these kind of highly stylized, rehearsed encounters where people are kind of following memorized scripts and hoping it gets over very quickly. So how do we get more feedback in our organizations? I think as individuals and as leaders, we need to encourage people to take it into their own hands. And in some ways, we should be out there doing our own performance reviews. So something like this. At the beginning of the month, you set out your goals, your performance goals and your learning goals. Then, at the end of the month, you call yourself into the office. Give yourself an assessment. Where are you making progress? Where are you falling behind? What tools and information do you need to do a little bit better? Now, what's curious about this is that this is already happening around the world. You look at teams and organizations in Europe and South America and Asia and here in North America, groups of teams that are cohesive. They do this already. They will meet, not with the boss's approval, not because they've asked permission from the boss. They will meet and they will go do this and have a meeting at a coffee shop and say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish this month? Here are our goals. We'll meet at the end of the month, give ourselves feedback. Right? Small entrepreneurs around the world have been doing this since there were small entrepreneurs. Right? Look at any great athlete. Read the story of any great athlete. He or she has coaches, but he or she is also meticulously charting their feedback, keeping records of what they're doing. This is an ethic of setting our own goals, or setting our own team goals, working together to set goals, evaluating ourselves, that is powerful in achieving mastery. And in many ways, our organizations aren't constituted to do this, so we need to do it ourselves. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Let's go to purpose. I think, as I look around the times that we inhabit right now, I think there's a palpable sense that a page is turning. A page is turning. And what I see in organizations is this. I think we are seeing the limits of the profit motive. The profit motive is a very good thing. It is a good thing morally. It is a good thing for efficiency. But it's not the only thing. And I think more and more, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector or the nonprofit sector, and as you all know, the borders between those are blurring. There's a rise of what you might call the purpose motive. The purpose motive. And I think one of the things we've seen in the last decade or so, is when the profit motive comes unmoored from the purpose motive, bad things happen. Bad things ethically, but you know what else? To me, that's not even the biggest problem. I mean bad things in the sense of mediocre things, average things, uninspiring things. Why is that the case? Because I think inside of organizations, for-profit organizations, where if the single rallying cry inside an organization is let's raise earnings per share 4 cents this quarter, that is a good and noble goal. But I got to tell you, folks, it's not the kind of thing that makes most people leap out of bed in the morning, race to work to do something amazing. It is, to my mind, insufficiently motivating. And I think one of the things that's so interesting going on right now is that we always tell the social sector, the not-for-profit sector, you have to act like a business. I think that's a mistake because as someone who studies businesses, most businesses aren't run very well. But I think more and more what you're seeing is almost a reverse, where people are telling businesses, you know what? You've got to act more like the social sector. The only way people will be enduringly motivated is if they're animated by something larger than themselves. They're animated by a purpose larger than themselves. I have one little exercise on this that I want to give to you. It's a diagnostic exercise. And it comes from an old boss of mine, a guy named Robert Reich, who was the U.S. Labor Secretary for a few years, who I had the good fortune of working for. And I like this test, I like this diagnostic tool because I think it's effective, and I also like it because it's simple and it's free. Here's what he taught me to do. When he would go to visit organizations and talk to people who are working there, go to visit companies and people working there, he would say, I listen to what people tell me, but I also listen for the pronouns they use. When people describe the organization for which they're working, do they use we or do they use they? When they're talking about their church, when they're talking about the company they work for, do they say, we are doing such and such, or do they say, they are doing such and such? And there's almost a perfect correlation that the we organizations are high performing, and the they organizations, they reveals a sense of alienation, a sense of dissatisfaction that I think limits performance. So I encourage you, as you talk to people, whether it's in your church or whether it's in your own company, what are the pronouns they're using? Are you a we organization or a they organization? If you're a we organization, outstanding. If you're a they organization, start thinking hard about how you can change. And ultimately, that's what we're talking about here in all of these sessions, is change. How do we change things? How do we change our church? How do we change our organization? How do we change our world? And that's a daunting question. If you sit there and say, can I change my organization? The answer, actually, folks, is no. You can't just change your organization. One person simply can't do that. However, that's the wrong question. The question should be, can I change what I do tomorrow? And the answer to that is yes. The answer to that is yes. And that's how change really happens. It happens by people taking small steps in their own world that cascade into something bigger. And change of all kinds also begins, and this is what's so glorious about this summit, I am convinced that anything good in life begins with a conversation. Every great romance began with a conversation. Every great social movement began with a conversation. Every great business began with a conversation. That's what changes the world. And so the more we have conversations about these ideas, the more we can change things. And that's why I'm so deeply grateful to all of you for letting me participate in this conversation, because I think that the cascade of conversations we're having, the small steps you're making in your own world, the collective force of the hearts and minds of the people here, the people watching out there, human beings who want to tap that third drive, the collective power of all that is the sort of thing that changes the world. So for that, I want to thank all of you for changing the world.